Uh, just before, the story preceding the passage that was just read, Jesus was in another part of the country. When he met, actually encountered a devil himself. There was a madman. There was a man who was possessed by the devil. He cries all night long. He cuts himself with the stones. He was in chains, and he breaks up the chains like as if it's a piece of straw, and nobody could subdue the man. And when he saw Jesus coming and getting off of the boat, he went and fell before his feet. And he cried, "Oh, what do we have to do with you, Jesus, Son of the Most High God?" And Jesus said, "Come out of him. But I ask you, I adjure you by the name of the living God, do not torment me. Do not send me out of here." And they finally asked for permission to get into the swine that were feeding on the mountainside. And what happened to the swines, you know the story, is they fell off of the very steep cliff and all drowned, 2,000 of them. Then the people of the town did not like this idea. It was an economic interest that was touched. So they came to Jesus and said, "Leave town now. We don't want you here." And so Jesus gets in the boat again and goes to the other side of the Lake Galilee, Sea of Galilee, as Jesus calls it, Sea of Galilee. But the people actually called it Lake of Galilee, or Lake Kinneret, they call it in Hebrew. And so when he was going there, there was a man who comes here. He was actually an authority, a man of high authority, Jairus. Once again, Jesus got into the boat and crossed to Lake Galilee. The person in charge of the Jewish meeting place, meaning he was a man of high authority, and he started begging Jesus for help. He said, "My daughter is about to die. Please come and touch her. Your hand is needed. Come and lay your hands on her." And Jesus, without saying any word, anything, started following the man to his house. This man wanted Jesus actually to be physically present in order to bestow the healing upon his daughter. Unlike the centurion, just a few months ago before that, the centurion came and said, "Come and please save my servant, for she is about to die." And Jesus said, "Let's go to your home." And the centurion said, "No, I know what you said. Even if you speak the word, it will be done. You don't need to go to my house. I am not worthy that you should come to my house. Just say the word and she will be healed." And Jesus admired the man's faith, and the servant was healed immediately. Now, while they were going on the streets, there were a lot of crowds, a lot of people around Jesus. They wanted to see the miracle. They loved to see the miracles. They had seen many miracles that Jesus had done in Capernaum, such as the man with the palsy of hands, and Peter's mother-in-law that he had healed from the fever, and many others. And so they were sure in Capernaum that Jesus is going to heal somebody, and they were wanting to see what it is going to be, what miracle is it going to be today. And so everybody was pressing on Jesus from the left, from the right, from behind, as he was going on the narrow streets of Capernaum. And among the crowd was a lady who was weak, really weak. Imagine if you lose blood for 12 years, what will happen to you? Without blood, we are not able to live. Its death is certain. And her hemoglobin probably was down to 2, 3, who knows. But she was very weak. But she had a strong faith. She had gone to many doctors, and many doctors have seen her, and Every doctor, this doctor, that doctor, they prescribed what they thought was going to stop the bleeding, the plague. But nothing got better. It only got worse. And every time she went to this doctor, so she paid them money. And she finally ran out of money. Too many doctors. There is a saying in Ethiopian language we have. When there are too many doctors, the patient dies. That's how it says. Hakim sibaza bashtanya imota. That's what happened to this lady. She did not get any better at all. When she heard that Jesus is coming, and then she remembered what he had done, the miracles he had performed in Capernaum. And she said, if I could only touch his clothes, then I will be healed. In other words, she had an unshakable faith in Jesus' ability to heal her. And so as weak as she was, imagine the crowd that was around there. And so she would try to sneak through. She didn't want to be noticed, for a reason we will mention later on. She did not want to be noticed. She did not want to be seen either by Jesus or by the crowd. So she finally was able to sneak and go through. And Jairus, as I've already mentioned, was a man of great influence. His daughter was acutely ill. An acute illness is an illness of short duration, but extremely serious illness. The course will have to be reversed or the patient will die for certain. Acute illness usually about 3 days or less, sometimes a month or less. But the Jairus' daughter was suffering from this acute illness. The woman was suffering from chronic illnesses. The daughter was 12 years old. The woman had suffered for 12 years of serious bleeding issue. She was totally impoverished. Compare and contrast Jairus with the woman. He was a big shot in the town. She was nobody. She was weak. She was cachectic and really hardly could walk because she has lost blood for 12 years. She was anemic. She was a social outcast. I'll tell you why. During the Israelites, there were 2 laws: ceremonial law and the Decalogue, the 10 Commandments, moral law. According to the ceremonial law, any woman who is having her period cannot touch anyone. She cannot go into the temple. She is prohibited. Anybody who touches her while she is having an issue of blood, even a normal monthly period, you're not to touch anyone. You are unclean according to that ceremonial law. The law condemned her already. So she did not want to, she knew she was breaking the law when she went into the crowd, because during this time, she was not supposed to do that. But she knew one thing: the only way she can get rid of this plague was by coming to Jesus and touch his clothes. She didn't want to go face to face. She would be breaking the law. She thought she could get out. She could get rid of this plague by touching his without being noticed by either Jesus or the crowd. Her unshakable faith helped her to get to the place where she was. When she touched Jesus, just a little piece, what happened? And straight away the fountain of her blood was dried up. And she felt in her body that she was healed of the plague. And all of a sudden, Jesus stops the procession. The procession stops. Stop. And then he turns around and asks a seemingly ridiculous, senseless question. Who touched me? And the disciples said, particularly Peter said, Master, You know all these people, you know all this crowd. Everybody is pressing on you from left to right and from back and forth. Why do you ask such a silly question kind of thing? And Jesus kept on asking. He probably was looking at the woman. Who touched me? Because I know a virtue had come out of me. Now, he knew she was healed. The woman knew she was healed. But why did Jesus turn around and say, who did that? Because he was not only looking at the healed woman, he was also looking at the crowd. He was also looking at Jairus, who was still there. Mind you, Jairus was the one who pleaded, come please, unless you come now, at this moment. My daughter is going to be gone. She's dead. When you look at a child who is dying, that's something you don't ever want to see. Anyone's child, much less your own child. It is a very, very horrifying scene. And he came running to Jesus because I'm sure he did a lot of other things, just like the woman did, and other doctors who went to see them. But nothing happened. He knew his daughter is dead unless Jesus can intervene, and immediately now. But Jesus is taking time. This is a disease that was been going on for 12 years. This is an acute disease that could kill the kid any moment. And I am sure Jairus' faith was put to the test at this time. By the way, does he really know? I mean, this was something that has been going for 12 years. It hasn't killed her for 12 years. But this daughter of mine is acutely ill, and unless she gets the help right away, she will be dead. Does he really know? Is Jesus the one I thought that he would? He probably thought that in his mind. And we'll see later on why I think so. And so Jesus stands around, talks to the lady, and he was turning to the crowd. He was also turning to us, here, sitting here today. The only way we can be free is by coming to Jesus by faith and touching Jesus by faith to clean our dirty rags, to clean our sins and redeem us for his Father's glory and for his glory. The woman, when he said, he was looking at her, I'm sure. Even though he never mentioned her name. He did not want to mention her name. He didn't say anything. But he probably was looking at her because she was right there. She just touched his clothes. But the woman was fearing and trembling, knowing what had happened. She came and fell before him and told him the entire truth. He said to her, "Daughter, your faith has made you well. Go in peace and be healed of your affliction." You see, what she was afraid, she was unclean. She was not supposed to touch anyone, much less Jesus. She probably was afraid he would rebuke her for trying to do the wrong things, not following the rule, for breaking the law, the ceremonial law. That is, a bleeding woman, even during the monthly period, regular, normal period, is not supposed to touch anybody. But Jesus did not condemn her. He used the most endearing term, daughter. And that is the character of Jesus, and that's what he does when a sinner comes to him. Son, daughter, your faith has made you well. Go in peace and be healed of your affliction. Jesus is every bit as willing to tell each one of us today, son, daughter, your faith has healed you. Go in peace. Jesus wanted to signify to her spiritual relationship. Through him, being a child of God by adopting Grace. He is now calling her daughter. He himself being God. She is a daughter of God. And we are unclean just like the woman was. Christ can clean us from that uncleanness if we come to him by faith. And there comes the bad news from the home of Jairus. While he was still speaking, remember before, while he was still speaking, she goes and touches him. He was speaking to Jairus before. And he was heading to Jairus' home before. And now while he is telling her, daughter, your faith has healed you. Go and be healed. And now while he's talking to the woman, somebody comes from Jairus' home. They told him, your daughter is dead. Why trouble the teacher any more further? It's pointless from here on. There is nothing Jesus can do from here on. Yeah, true. Jesus could have, if he had got there on time. I'm sure that's what Jairus was thinking. Why don't you get there on time? Because my daughter is acutely ill. This woman has lived for 12 years and is still alive. And Jesus heard the story, the message they brought from home. As soon as Jesus had heard the word that was spoken by the messengers from Jairus' home, he said to the ruler of the synagogue, who was overwhelmed and troubled and quite dispirited, ready to soon away, because his daughter was dead. Imagine if somebody comes to you. You were trying to get her healed. You trusted in this man, Jesus. You came to him. But Jesus is taking his time to get to him, to get to her. And in the meantime, she dies. Imagine what was going through his mind at the time. To begin with, Jairus' faith in Jesus was not quite as strong as the woman. The woman had no doubt. She had done everything she could do and on her own to get rid of the disease. Everything you can imagine. Everything. So she saw many physicians who could do nothing for her. And so did Jairus. But she had a faith, a strong faith, unshakable faith, that if she can only touch his clothes, she will be healed. Jairus was he had faith in Jesus, but not to the extent the woman had in Jesus. And so Jesus says to him, but Jesus told him, be not afraid. Only believe. Be not afraid. Only believe. Do not be discouraged at this or distrust my power to help you. Only believe that I am able to raise even from the dead. And fear not, and it will be done. So the trouble with Jairus was he did not have the full faith and the unshakable faith the woman had in Jesus. Jesus took his time. And sometimes we ask, we pray, we don't understand why the Lord does not answer our prayers. Why, Lord? Why did my child die? I know a friend of mine who lived in Chicago, and he lost 2 children in a period of 2 months. I went to the funeral of both. I cannot tell you how gut-wrenching that was. Everybody prayed from East Coast to West Coast, people who knew them. Why? Why, Jesus? Why didn't you do this one? Sometimes we don't have the answer to the questions that we have until we come to our new home, until we see Jesus face to face on that glorious resurrection day. And then we shall see, and then we will know, aha, that's what it was. And Jairus couldn't understand it either, why Jesus would take so long to get to his daughter. In the first place, I was the first in line. I had the first dips on this thing, on you, Jesus. This woman had 12 years, and she had plenty of time. She could live on. This one is dying, and now she is dead. Yeah, she's dead. My daughter is dead. But Jesus tries to comfort him. What does he say? Do not be afraid. Only believe that I will be able to do the things I told you, that I will raise her even if she is dead. The woman obviously was the symbol of sinners. We're all sinful people. We're all unclean. Sin is a mortal disease. It's a killer. And without the grace of God, a mortal one, it is a killer. That woman would have died had not been the grace of God, had not been for Jesus' intervention. Now, she had a great faith, unshakable faith, as I have said, in Jesus. But it's not really her faith that healed her. What did Jesus say? I know that virtue had come out of me. It's good to have a faith. But it was the virtue that comes out of Jesus Christ himself that did the healing. The same thing with us. We say, hey, I've done this, I've done this. We say he has done this, she has done this. Good church member, reads the Bible regularly, prays by the book. But why? These are the questions we are unable to answer at the moment. But a day will come when it will be as clear as the day when Jesus returns again. In this story, two stories. Story within a story. First was a story of Jairus, because he was the first one to come to him. And while he was still walking and talking to Jairus, going to his home, and then a woman comes. That's the second story. That's why this is a story within a story. Two stories in one session. What was Jesus trying to teach in this situation? There are two fundamental truths. Both are in the Seventh-day Adventist fundamental beliefs, number 28 of them. Number one, there is nothing we can do on our own to gain salvation. Nothing, I mean nothing. Salvation only comes by the grace of God. Through faith we receive it. Our faith, even our faith, is not what does it. Our faith is just our hand to receive the gift that has already been given to us. And Jesus said, a virtue came out of me. So who is this? The only thing that can help us, that can get rid of sin and save us, is Jesus Christ himself. That's one thing I think this teaches us. The second fundamental truth Jesus was trying to teach in here is, death is asleep. Now, when he arrived at Jairus' home, there were a lot of wailing and crying. And in the Far East, in the East, they used to have professional criers and mourners, and they, even to some extent in Ethiopia, they do that too, to this very day. These people, they hit themselves on the chest and they really suffer themselves a great deal. And these people were mourning, they were crying, and they were wailing and saying, hey, this is a little kid now, she's dead. And Jesus said, why? Why all the wailing? Why all the crying? For the child is asleep. Jesus, we know what we're talking about. We know a dead body when we see it. She is dead. Truly, she was dead. But Jesus is talking about a different kind of death. This is a sleep, you will wake up from it one day. The other day it is. The second day is from which nobody comes back, no matter what. And so Jesus takes three of his disciples, the mother, the father, and says, show me her bedroom, show me where her body is. And they did. And he says, Desmond, or Talitha, Kumi, meaning, girl, stand up, rise up. All of a sudden, immediately, the lifeless body became a healthy body. She was completely and totally restored to life and to health. And Jesus said, give her something to eat. When a patient is sick and they refuse to eat, that's a serious issue. When people stop eating and they are sick, usually that is a sign of some serious thing coming up, death. To be a witness to all of the rest of them, and she said, give her something to eat. They gave her food and she started eating. Her health was completely restored. And people glorified God. At the other side, they say, Jesus, get out of here. We don't want you here. We are more interested in our economic well-being. You've already killed 2,000 pigs. We could have had a lot of money from that, you know. Please leave our town. But here, they welcomed him. They received him. And Jesus, after he restored to life the dead child, said, do not tell anyone about this matter. Well, I don't know what that really means. I cannot understand. I mean, there were a lot of people there. They had seen the child dead. They told Jesus, when we know a dead body, we know it. And so they laughed at him when he said, she's sleeping. They laughed. What are you talking about? And he said, yeah. He showed them that he has the power over death. Jesus has power over death. And so he raised there. That is the second lesson Jesus was trying to teach us. Now, I don't know when you came to church this morning, what was bothering you? What was in your mind? What was the most recalcitrant problem you might have had, such as health issue, financial issue, whatever issue that may be? How do you say, hey, this condition is hopeless. It's just absolutely hopeless. I don't know how to do this. I don't know how to deal with this. I know this is hopeless. It's done. I'm finished. Well, there is one thing you can do about the situation. The situation may seem to be totally insurmountable, totally out of your control. You are absolutely helpless, whatever that situation might be. So what is one thing you can do? What's one thing that I should do? Because the question is, for me, maybe more so as it is for you. What can we do when we have a situation like that? Somebody is dying. There is one thing we can do. We should do what the bleeding woman did and what Jairus did. Come to Jesus and have an unshakable faith in him. May the Lord help us to do that.